Alrighty. Welcome back to Monte's Gems. We're joined by a special guest this week. This is Ethan. Uh, Second appearance on the show. First ever second appearance. Last seen with his twin brother Jesse. And thanks for joining us on episode number, the big 40 this week.
Thank you. I'm honored to be on again. I didn't know I was the first double appearance, so that's like a
Oh,
double
yeah.
honor,
Yeah.
triple honor with episode 40.
Oh, yeah. It's a pretty big deal around these parts. But
Nice.
kind of before the show, over the past couple of weeks, Ethan's had this class, and I guess Ethan can go over a little bit more about what he's doing and why he's taking these classes and what kind of his mission is. And our discussion earlier, we were kind of talking about that. But basically, we've been meeting up and kind of discussing the bigger picture and what we think. And his base is more Christianity. His base is Christianity, and kind of trying to gather my thoughts on religion and the world. And we've been talking about the Bible and discussing afterwards. And for me, it's been pretty compelling and very thought provoking for me. Like, it's something that I think about throughout the week. And I really respect his opinion and his knowledge, and I think it's just been good for me to just kind of hear, and we've just been talking about life in general, kind of what somebody's purpose is and how to find your purpose, and good and morality, and kind of what does morality mean? Where does it come from? Is there a backing to it? If not, then does it really have a purpose? And kind of just those are the striking key points that I've taken away from our conversations, at least. So yeah, I guess if you kind of wanted to, I think you probably talked about it on Jesse's episode, but kind of we were talking before the podcast, and you were talking about how you were kind of going down the path of your dream occupation in sense of purpose and what you want to be doing and kind of that route. So if you kind of want to go over that a little bit, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm in seminary right now. I'm training to be a Bible translator. So obviously from that you can infer I'm Christian. I believe the Christian message that like Jesus died for me, rose for my sins, and like having like made that a more central part of my life, like it's changed my life for the better. And so I want to share that with other people. And yeah, I think that I'm good with language and like kind of like thinking through those things. So the way that I feel like I can share with other people best is through like Bible translation, which is why I'm pursuing that career. But along that route, I get to take a lot of like interesting language classes, theology classes, different, more like pastoral classes that are less relevant to me, but still interesting. But yeah, the specific class that I'm taking now, it has me like talking to someone with like a different viewpoint and like having good conversations. And so Jake and I have been meeting and we've just been like having conversations about the Bible, reading through like different passages, just kind of like wrestling through some different ideas. And it's been really interesting, and I've really appreciated the conversations we've had because it's not the kind of thing where like Jake says he like thinks about it throughout the week, like I do too, and I feel like I learn a lot from what he says, which is why I asked Jake to do it with me because I'm interested in what he has to say and respect his opinion. So yeah, we've just been having some great conversations.
Yeah, and I think something that really stood out to me is, I mean, I've talked about it on the podcast a lot, and I've talked to you about it last week or 2 weeks ago or something, but just kind of that one guy that stood out to me at work, that window washer who kind of embodies that Christian belief. And it really it's really, he walks the walk and he talks the talk, and he lives that Christian life, and he means it, and you can tell by his he's just being genuine. And we were talking about that, and I don't know, it's kind of, I get the same feeling from our conversations, and I guess that's just something that I really appreciate. And I don't remember where I was going with that, but
Well, thank you. I appreciate that a lot. I mean, when you talk about that guy, I'm like, I want to be like that guy. He sounds like a pretty good dude. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. But I guess I don't know. I guess one of the things that I appreciate about you is, I guess over the past couple of weeks, is the importance of having a discussion and being able to disagree on things, but still feel like you're not trying to explain or overcorrect the other person, and just having a discussion and sharing what you think, because everybody has so many different thoughts. And why that's so special to me is I feel like when I was a little kid, I never shared any of my thoughts with anybody because I never really thought they had any meaning, or not any meaning, but they wouldn't bring value to the conversation, so I wouldn't really share them. So I guess just stressing the importance of that is something that, I don't know, that's something that's important to me, I guess.
Thank you. Yeah, that means a lot. I mean, I appreciate the same thing about you, and you make it easy because I feel like you have interesting things to say. So, that helps too.
Chad's being real quiet this episode. You haven't even heard his
Well,
voice
I'm
for
waiting for
once.
you guys to like sing "Kumbaya" and like make out like, "Oh, I love you for this much, and I love you for this much." Oh. Like, oh my gosh, dude!
Yeah.
Let's
It
quit
sounds like
stroking each other's egos and let's get on to a conversation,
it
boys.
sounds like you're feeling a little jealous or left out,
Yeah.
Chad.
Is that?
I am.
Let's all go around and say something nice about Chad.
Yeah.
Chad, I really appreciate your sense of humor and your ability to bring humor to this conversation.
No, so the discussions, is there a context to it? I think you guys were talking about that Mark 1 is what you were going over and then you were covering. I guess maybe I would be interested to hear about maybe some of the areas of conflict where you guys have had disagreements or maybe you've had deeper thoughts, what the eye-opening parts of that have been, so I can get more context and then I can ask more questions to try to have a better understanding, unless you guys still want to like keep stroking each other's ego and we
Yeah.
can do that for another 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think the main thing that we were disagreeing on is my stance on science versus religion, because growing up I always saw it as kind of an either or, as a maybe by the teachers or whoever growing up, it's they take this idea of evolution and then they kind of, or not necessarily even evolution, just science in general and the age of the earth and just all of these scientific findings, I guess, which I don't know, everybody has different opposing opinions. There's experts on every sides of everything. It's just really what you believe, but I always saw it as a religion or science and never really a take science and try and explain that with religion, or kind of run with it alongside each other.
Well, do you remember when you were a little kid, Jake? There was a guy named Kent Hovind who did all those dinosaur videos and
Yeah, yeah,
everything like
yeah.
that. Who was a scientist?
Yeah.
Like, do you remember watching any of those videos? Do you remember the context and what we were learning?
I remember watching them like on your laptop in your room, but I don't really remember the context of any of them.
Okay, that's why I guess I was a little surprised to hear you say that science and religion, Christianity, were conflicting, and so I just what did some of that happen in high school with maybe varying ideas or conflicting ideas or anything like that, or how do you feel like they just don't kind of get molded together?
I feel like it was elementary school, and kind of every time we were reading like a science textbook or something like that, and we would come across like, this is like a million years old or something, and then the teacher like just automatically correcting and saying, oh, that was like 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. Actually, it's saying that because it thinks the earth is this old, but Christianity says it's actually this old. And then you kind of take that, you step back and you look back like 1,000, 2,000 years ago, and it's like, but there's written record dating back that far, and it's just not the case. So it's kind of that point of confusion, and it just didn't add up to me. So I guess that's kind of where it stemmed from. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we had maybe I feel like that was more a point of like agreement a little bit, or at least like maybe I felt there was no tension, but it wasn't like I was like,
Right.
oh, I'm gonna affirm this thing and like diminish this thing. So we talked a lot about like, and I actually, when we were talking, I was like, I think Chad would probably like maybe know more about this or be able to talk about it better. But like I think it's really important to understand like what the genre of biblical like passages is that you're reading. And so like people will classify like Genesis as like some sort of combination between like mythology and history, where there's like obviously a historical interest because they're using genealogies. At the same time, there's all this like poetic language. There's like poetic techniques being used of like patterns and like just yeah the way that it's structured. It's like very clearly like poetry. And so I've heard people say that it's like sort of a unique set of or a unique genre. But what that means is like a genre kind of influences what it means for something to be true. And so like for Genesis to be true, that doesn't mean that it has to give historical information. It doesn't mean that it has to say this is how old the world is. What it means to be true is to like whatever it's trying to like teach in the form that it's trying to teach it. And so that's why I think it doesn't conflict with science. I don't know much about evolution, but I don't think that they have to be in conflict because I don't think that Genesis is like teaching about the age of the earth, I guess. I'm curious if you agree with that, Chad, or what you think.
Well, I try to take this type of idea even deeper, and I try to always look at it in its most maybe simplistic form, and I try to say, okay, which one is provable? Is the idea of how old the Earth is based on Christianity provable? Is the idea of how old the Earth is provable from science? And factual evidence to where me and you, we can just sit here and we can say, oh, yep, 100% true. Like there's no doubt about it. And all three of us agree. I don't think that that's ever going to happen. And so when you get to a point where there's no provable evidence about things, then I start questioning. It's like, okay, so why are we trying so hard to prove this specific thing? And I think from a scientific standpoint, it's to try to prove that there's no God. And from a Christian standpoint, is to try to prove that there is a God, and because there is a God, that we should all have faith in God. Would you guys agree on that?
Yeah.
Like that's what we're trying to prove, right?
Yeah.
So that's where that's what I try to do with it, is like, okay, like we're like, how many hours am I going to spend trying to study how old the earth is, if the earth is flat, if the earth is round, so then I can go try to share with people that the faith that they should believe in God because this is true, when it's like I don't have any way. I think that if it was that true, that it would be so easy to understand and so simple that it would be provable to so many people that they would be able to comprehend it. But so much of these things, they have to be based on faith. And it's like, how much time and effort am I going to put into studying this to learn and learn and learn? And that's just based on I just got so exhausted from trying to study and learn and learn. And it's like, oh, I'm searching for this golden treasure, this golden nugget that's going to give me the information so that I can help other people believe that there's a God. And I guess for me to be able to believe that there's God has came from struggles. It's came from having a hard and difficult life and realizing, wow, man is imperfect. And if I don't have a value system or I don't have some type of moral code, like, what is the point of this life? Like, my life is just going to be absolute utter chaos. And that's, I guess, where I go into a little bit of the Jordan Peterson, where, life is about chaos, but there has to be order in that chaos. And that's why I have such a strong belief that there is a God, and that in order to have a fulfilled life, or for all us to have peace or to have an enjoyable life, is that there has to be order. There has to be certain things that we as a community agree on. Secondly, in order for me to actually have love and have empathy towards Jesse and Jake, I have to believe that they are part of human nature, that somebody created them instead of they're just some other piece of garbage or some other thing there that has no value. Because if they don't have any value, well, then my life doesn't have any value. And if my life doesn't have any value, it's like, well, what am I even here for? And so I guess that was kind of going off on a tangent, but I don't know. I really struggle with trying to go down on these buddy hills, because I think you guys both know that I don't know if I still probably wouldn't call it a cult, but it was, very far off in terms of trying to seek out religion and how far these people were going into trying to determine what was right, what was wrong, and just studying the Bible to the nth degree to be able to be essentially a perfectionist and to be perfect in the eyes of God. And it was just like, okay, like we keep doing this, and we just keep getting to be a smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller group, because people keep leaving, and now we're judging them, and we're, God's chosen people or whatever that might be. And so that's where I've kind of really tried to go back and be like, okay, what's the broader picture? Let's bring this all in, and how does this work? So I know that was a lot, but hopefully trying to just shed some light on what you guys were sharing, what I heard you saying, in terms, and that's why for me, like, religion, agree to disagree, is because like so many people have ideas and they have things to say, and we got to take it really, really deep to see what's provable and what's not. So if Ethan has something to say, I'm going to do more time asking him questions to truly try to understand his perspective than I am trying to be combative and say, well, no, 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 and no. And so I got to get an understanding where he's coming from, and maybe he's been able to explore some ideas and see some things that I've never ever seen before. And before I go making accusations, I need to be able to see where he's coming from, to see, if there's something I can learn from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I feel like I agree with like pretty much all of that. Like we were kind of talking in our conversations, like there's all these arguments for God. God exists because of this and this and this. But at the end of the day, like, none of them are perfect proofs. There are things that are like, okay, this seems reasonable, this seems reasonable. Maybe it makes a cumulative case where you're like, it's more reasonable to believe in God. But at the end of the day, like you said, I think that there's so many things like this it comes down to a question of faith. So yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. I think the one thing I would add is like, I think there is benefit to going down these bunny hills, not in the sense of like, I'm going to reach the end of the bunny hill, but I feel like every time I do it, I pick up something like separate that like was good that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So like, for instance, like this evolution versus like Genesis question. I don't think that I don't understand science or evolution any better. I don't really know any of that. But I do feel like I learned this emphasis of like, it's really important to study the Bible on its own terms, meaning understand its context, understand its genre, because otherwise you're going to interpret things in light of like your own circumstances instead, and you're going to read it like a modern history textbook. So that's like just an example of like, I think we learn things, but you're right, we're not going to reach the end of those questions.
No, yeah, and you're 100% right. It has to do with the history. It has to do what's going on in the actual area, that whatever is being written, like what's the context, essentially what's today's news, like if someone were to read today's news, and I don't know what the big article is because I don't really read the news at all, but 2000 years from now, would they be able to completely understand what's being said without putting themselves right here in our place? The language is going to have changed. They're not going to know the idioms. They're not going to know the jokes or whatever is associated with so many things. And like you said, that's why context is important. That's why also language is important. So if we're reading the Old Testament, reading it in Hebrew and having an really good grasp of the Hebrew language and so many of those idioms and in the things that they're saying, so there's actually a way of interpreting scripture called Pardes, Pardes. It's the Peshat, it's the Remez, it's the Drash, and the Sod. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not.
Okay, so one of them has to do with the literal translation of it, and essentially a lot of Jewish theologians and Jewish theologians, they'll say that the Bible can be interpreted in these 4 different ways, and so you go about and do that. So it's the actual reading of it, and then the second one is, oh man, yeah, I'm going to. I'm going to mess them all up. I know, Jake, we did an episode about this. Do you remember? Can you help me out on on the other 3? Do you remember?
No, I don't remember what the. No, I do not.
I could guess because it sounds like, so there's something that sounds similar to that where there's a Christian parallel from maybe like the first few hundred years of the church where it's like you've got the literal meaning, there's like spiritual, moral, like allegory, like is it something like that, like those types of
It's
categories?
similar to that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so far removed from this. Like, I mean, I'll be honest. Like, probably in the last 11 years, I've really just been disassociated with religion because of, and I think going deeper into this is I'll share my story in terms of I'm removed from religion. Is in the last few months I've realized that my faith was very much attached to a group identity, and in terms of wanting to be accepted by a specific group and then being part of that group and like working together as a team. And I don't know if this comes from me being an athlete and really wanting to, be part of a team, be part of a group where we're all working towards something, where I'll go overboard and really kind of get into that team or that religious circle. But then once the religious circle starts, having issues or questioning each other's, and unfortunately some of the churches that I've been part of have just kind of dispersed and just kind of went away. They've kind of dissolved. And with that, it's been, I would say that I had a strong group identity to God in terms of the church. And so I would always question, like, why is this happening? Like, how is a church, somebody who is set on God and trying to be close to him, how does it just dissolve? How does it become nothing? And it was just like, so it started having me question that. And a lot of this, again, has to do with parts of my life where that church put certain rules and regulations on me. And because, they were in a leadership position, and the person that I was going to be marrying was their daughter. And so they wanted to start creating a lot of rules and regulations and stipulations. And it was just like, whoa, dude, like, how's all this coming? And unfortunately, I didn't stand up for myself. And I've learned to set boundaries and all of these different things that, were trauma or whatever you want to call it. But I associated some of it with God. And as I've looked past in the past few months, I've realized that I really want to focus on my relationship with God being a one-on-one relationship, that I can go to any church, be part of any group, and have strength in he is my buddy, like me and him are friends. When I hear things, they'll go in, I'll be able to absorb them, listen to them, but also just let him go in one ear and out the other because of the connection that I have with him. It would be like, Jake and I have a relationship, and if somebody else told me, oh, well, Jake did this, and it's like, no, dude, like, I know Jake good enough that that's not him, that's not his character. And I feel like that's something that I've struggled with God, is that because of the fact that I can't communicate with him and I can't talk to him and he talks back to me, and we can have that clear lines of communication, that sometimes we're left to listening to other people and talking to other people and them telling us who he is, and then creating this idea of who he is based on their stories and based on all these things. And so I don't feel like we ever really get a clear idea of who he is unless it's just a accumulation of all these things that other people have told us. And it's not really God, then it's religion.
So can I ask a follow-up? Is that okay? I'm just curious,
Yeah.
like, so like, then where do you like find out who God is, like, personally?
Well, that's something that I'm seeking, and I think a lot of it has to do through scripture, reading, praying, continuing to pray. But I would say this is one of the things I struggle with Christianity, is that they've created this idea that the Holy Spirit is who speaks to us and who tells us who God is. And Jesus dying on the cross has given us the Holy Spirit to now where we know what is right and wrong or how to live a life. And I'll take a great example is that, well, inside that church that I was at, they were saying that the things that the Holy Spirit was saying to them, that God was saying to them, was that I needed to read 12 books before I could go and then like date this person or be part of this or have a relationship with their daughter, or that I needed to go through this program, this Bill Gothard program, and all these rules and these regulations that they were playing that God was saying to them. It's like, oh, okay, so that's what God was saying to them. It's like that idea right there can be manipulated so easy as to this is what God says. And so that's where, to me, to answer your question, this is what I'm trying. I don't know how you really figure out or understand that, because I think that we're always going to have to filter what people tell us who God is. Like, it's really the only way to try to figure out who he is through that. But I know that, God is love, and I know that, relationships are really, really important. I don't think we can fully understand who God is without having deep relationships with others. So that's a really tough question to answer, and I don't really have a good answer for it right now. I just know what he's not, and I've had a really bad experience of that. And so I'm just trying to kind of build up my relationship with him again, to where it's not so much representative of people and how people talk to me or treat me, so that I'm confident in who I am, and that relationship with him as a foundation.
Sounds like you were in a very interesting community. That's
Yeah. I mean, a number of my friends have done podcasts who are in that community, and a lot of them would say that it was a cult. So, yeah, I don't really associate that because I think I'm too smart to ever be in a cult. So maybe it's my ego and my arrogance. But, I think this is that anytime you get with a group of people, I look at people as I think most of the people I've ever met in my life have really good intentions, and they have really good hearts, and they're trying to do the best that they know how. Keyword, that they know how. That we've all grown up with certain beliefs, we've all grown up with certain traumas of things that have happened to us throughout our lives, just events, life events, and all those get thrown in the way in terms of how we treat people, how we make decisions, and how we live our life. And so maybe when we get inside of this community to where we're trying to live our life as best as we possibly can for God, is that we become perfectionists and we try to be perfect, and then we start judging other people because they're doing this wrong, and we want to show them what the right way is so they can live exactly like we do. And there's more comfort in them living like we do than there is from hoping that they'll just have a relationship with God. So we start pressing all these things on them, and I think, so that's why I struggle to say it's a cult, because it's like, well, a lot of things can be a cult. Like people who are sports fanatics, are they in a cult? Like, there's watching a TV, yelling and screaming at it for a team. Like, what's a cult? Like, anything can be a cult. So I think it's one of those things like alcoholism or drug addiction. It's like, yeah, if you can't get out of it, then yeah, it's probably a cult. But I don't feel like I was ever to the point where I'd given them all my money and I just couldn't get out or anything like that. Like, there was nothing holding me there. I didn't feel handcuffed. It was a decision that I made to be around some good people who I thought were really living a life towards God. But there's definitely a lot of very difficult things that I've had to work through through that part of my life.
Yeah, something that I've taken away from our conversations, I guess, is not necessarily the importance of Christianity in my life, but it's just, we were talking about the idea of morality, and it's like, okay, well, I feel I have a pretty good moral compass in doing what's right, and I have the ability to discern what's right and wrong. And odds are, if you're questioning if it's wrong, it's probably leaning towards wrong. If you have to question it, there's a lot of gray area and contextual stuff that sometimes is right, sometimes is wrong. Who's to say? But he brought up the point that that those the morality has to come from something. Like, who's like somebody who's absolutely crazy and schizophrenic, their moral compass is completely different than mine. And they're doing what their moral compass feels is right. Because if not, why would you go against it? And just the idea of kind of that has to come from somewhere. And he sent me this video of this guy trying to kind of not necessarily explain it, but just kind of a thought experiment of is what is right because God says so, or does God say that it's right because it is right? And it talks about both of these reasons, and Ethan could probably talk about it a little bit more in depth than I really could, because I heard it and I understood and I pretty much agreed with it, but it just kind of talks about, like, it has to come from somewhere. Like, we can't just all say that we agree on these things, because then you take into account like this hierarchy of people and fear of being like an outlier and being made fun of for your opinions, and people aren't going to actually think what they think or say what they think is right. And that was just something that was kind of a thought experiment for me in how do we know where the moral compass comes from, and kind of what is that backed in. If you wanted to add a little bit more on to that, I guess. I didn't really explain it very well, but
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the conversation that we were having is like Jake and I like both agree like there's like true moral values in the world, and we maybe had like somewhat differing views on like, okay, where does that come from? Like for me, it's like I believe that morality is from God. I think Jake was maybe like thinking through it a little bit and thinking like, yeah, like are these moral values just out there? Do they have a cause, or are they just like independently existing? And part of what the discussion tries to show is like if you have these like objective, real moral values out there, and there's no like God behind them, then there's no like reason to follow them, and so they're not like moral obligations. They're not really what they're like saying they are, because there's no obligation. They're just a thing out there. And then the second part that Jake was talking about is like the thought experiment, where the question is like, so like saying that moral values like somehow come from God. Do moral values come from God just because God says they're moral? So then God can just say like, okay, well, killing people is okay today, and like stealing is okay today. Well, then the problem is that like morality is just arbitrary. Okay, so then do moral values just like, does God just say things are good because they're already good? Well, then God is just like subject to this morality that's higher than him. And so God is just like us. He has to follow morality. And so there's a problem with both of those answers. And the argument would be, no, there's a third way. What we say is morality comes from the nature of God. And so because it flows from who God is, it's not like God can just say, this is good because I feel so today. It's like, no, it's in line with who he is, and that's why it's good. He can't just change that. And at the same time, it's not this thing that he's like subject to. He can, because it's flowing from him. So that was kind of the discussion we were having.
So I understand that he's not subject to it, but there has to be something that we're all subject to where everyone can be held accountable. And if that's why for me it's so powerful, and I would struggle to not have a belief in God because of the fact that these rules and regulations, like who's going to hold anybody accountable for anything? Like we're all going to come up with our own rules and our own ideas. Like well, our wives, they're going to like as a husband and a wife and our commitment, like who's going to be able to hold them accountable? How are we going to hold them accountable? Our brothers, our bosses, like who's going to hold anybody accountable for anything? It's like, no, like if we were all created, if we're all part of this creation, and we all have these rules and these regulations, we know that maybe not now God is holding us accountable, but at some point in time. And it's like with that accountability, it comes the sorrow, right? So that when you do something wrong, it's not just an understanding of, oh, well, okay, that was wrong. It's the feeling and the hurt associated with to who you've wronged. Like, if there's no God and there's no creation, then this being that you wrong has no value. So it's like, how do you have any sorrow for that? How do you have any hurt for that? How do you develop any type of love? Like, all these emotions have to come. My belief is that they have to come because there's an association with this moral standard of an ultimate creator who has given us all the gift of life. And it's like, it makes me want to take responsibility for my actions, but it also gives me the confidence that I can hold people accountable, because if I don't have that, then I can't hold anybody accountable for anything. And
Yeah,
I guess, is that what you were kind of saying, Ethan?
yeah, a lot of that. And I mean, I think the way you put it with accountability is maybe like the best way to put it. It's like, if there's no accountability, what is morality? Like, how is that even morality if we have a morality without accountability? Because then it's just like this thing out there and I can not do it, so I don't have any obligation to it. Then what does it even mean to be morality? So I think that sense of accountability is like inherent to what we see morality as being. So yeah, I completely agree with that.
Personally don't think that there's any clearer time than now to be able to understand that, because if we go based off of the US and our current laws and our current regulations and how morality has totally just pretty much evaporated into anything goes, is that what people can be, what they can do, all of these different types of things. And it's just like, okay, like, all right, so I can like this, I can like that. Well, where are we going to draw the line? Like, at some point, like, are pedophiles going to be okay? Like, how are we gonna make any rules and any regulations? How are we gonna have any stance to anything? How are we gonna hold people accountable for anything? Is there gonna be a point where nothing is wrong, where everything is acceptable, where okay, maybe not killing a baby in its womb is okay, but well, what about a 1-year-old? Like, what if they're total brats? Is that going to be okay next? Like, where does this end? How does it end? And it's just like, it seems like it's more powerful now to be able to see the power of having a moral standard and moral code than ever before, especially for people who have some type of a conservative compass, it seems. And that's why it just blows my mind, where it's just like, oh my gosh, like, I don't understand how people grasp that the more we allow things to happen, or ideas or thoughts to just be acceptable, and the more we just allow to happen, like, how we're working for the betterment of society. I don't really get that.
Yeah. Something that I was thinking about this week, and it's just the idea of, I believe in a creator, and I'm just not sure where that aligns with, and it doesn't even necessarily have to align with a religion per se, but it's just kind of trying to find that purpose in myself of, I think there's a creator, but what does that mean for me and my life? And if there's not a creator, is there really a purpose for my life, or am I just here just to be here? And if I'm just here to be here, then that moral compass kind of gets thrown out the window too. Like, and I've heard a saying like multiple times that, like, the Big Bang, the idea that everything came from the smallest little tiny molecule and it expanded into what is known as the universe now. And it's like, that requires one miracle for all of this to form. And the idea of creation, and it requires multiple miracles and all of these explanations required. But it's like, it made sense to me for a long time until I really sat down and thought about it. And it's like, but miracles are still happening today, you know? Like, there's people that fall from like thousands of feet in the air from an airplane with no parachute, and they hit the ground and they live. It's like, how would that not be described as a miracle, you know? It's like miracles still happen, and a lot of things, even like small things, are miraculous so long as they don't have a true explanation. Like, it's kind of a divine intervention almost for a lot of things that go unexplained. It's like, okay, how does that happen, you know? And I don't know, I would just say that's kind of, I'm trying to find where my spirituality lies, I guess, because I don't know, it's just something I've never really thought about. And it's just trying to think about all of these different things, and the idea of corporations and governments and powerful people throughout the world. It's like a lot of the time they don't have your best interests in in mind. Like, they really don't care about you a lot of the time. That's not to say the individual person doesn't care about people and doesn't want to do good, but corporations and government and dictatorships, like, it's not meant for everybody to strive and do well. It's it's kind of, I have to start thinking about what makes sense to me. What do I actually believe, you know? Where, like, kind of what you were talking about earlier, you associated with this group and you kind of went along with it, and then you finally stood up for yourself, and or wished you would have stood up for yourself. And it's kind of, what do I believe, and trying to find truth in it. And even if it's not like a hard fact truth, it's like, how can I connect spiritually? How can I learn more about it? And I guess that was just a big ramble, but kind of that's where my head's been at the past, I don't know, recent months, weeks.
So, what do you think your journey looks like from here? Like, what does that process look like?
I don't know. I was in our conversation earlier, we were talking about kind of like purpose, and I was just talking about like, I don't money is something that, like, financial stability is all that I really need, and just doing good and helping other people, it just feels good to me. Like, doing something that I love, that I'm passionate about, and helping other people while being financially stable, and just spreading good deeds and love and laughter, and it's just trying to find how to do that.
How does that associate with a relationship with God, or to figure out like what that connection is?
Um, I don't know. I'm not sure. I feel like my pre-existing belief of there being a creator, it kind of gives me a purpose. Like I was talking about before, if there's no creator, then I'm just here, then what's my purpose? And it kind of motivates you and gives you a reason to believe that you have a purpose, to give you a motivation to want to do all of the things you set out to do. And it just only makes sense to me that there's something behind that. It's just kind of trying to figure out what it is that I believe is behind that. But it feels like something has to be, you know?
Because I guess my view would be, if I decided one day that there was no God, that the only way of life would be to live as pleasurable of life as I possibly could,
Right.
as quick as I possibly could, and when it ends, it ends. But to just get as much pleasure as I possibly could, it seems like that would be the whole goal. Like,
Yeah.
whatever that is. And I think that's where, you get people like drugs and alcohol, like it's just like hitting that dopamine or whatever, like feels really good, feel really good, feel really good, feel really good. Like, and to me, it's almost like God keeps me grounded to want to work towards a future. Uh, like, yeah, it sounds like it would be really fun to like just be like I was in college every single day for the rest of my life. And you see, like, you know, a lot of movies are actually made of making fun of people who are just like, what was it, Old School with Will Ferrell, where he's like 40 years old, and then Step Brothers, where you know they're living together in their parents' house. And it's like, yeah, they don't have any responsibility, they don't have to do anything, but it's in, you know, none of us are fathers yet, but I think that once you have a child, I would have to assume that there's just so much more appreciation for God through having not just something like, we can't really understand how we were created, but once we have our own little creation that God gifted us, I would have to assume that there's just really something special to be able to grasp that. And, you know, when people are choosing not to live that life, that's their choice. But for me, it just seems like that's just going to be that second awakening of like having a higher level of appreciation and faith in the Creator, when you get to see like life actually forming and coming from you. I mean, like, you know,
Yeah.
we got the bullets inside to create those babies. Like, it's going to be our offspring to be able to have that and appreciate that. I just can only imagine what that's going to be like.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Like life in itself is a miracle, and just the idea of that coming from one tiny little cell and developing into an actual organism and seeing that grow. And I mean, just even being a third party and seeing that with our brother Isaac and seeing our nieces grow up, and it's wild to see. It's just like you see this little tiny baby and then you see it grow up, and it's like you get an awesome feeling in just seeing that. And then I can't even imagine, let alone being a dad and have that being your creation. And yeah.
Really, but that's still us. Like,
Yeah.
I'm still that little baby. I'm just
Yeah.
now 41 years old.
Yeah,
Like, that's still us. We were there. We were
Yeah.
all there. Like, it's just our life experiences, the amount of time we spend reading and learning, but we're still that little baby. Like, that's still all us. And that's what's like, I don't
Yeah.
know,
Wow.
so incredible to me about that is that's still me. I'm just now 41 years removed from it. Like,
Wow. Yeah, that is wild to think about. It does really put it in perspective. And you see all of these people, and you think of them as a little baby, and you kind of look at their life and see all the twists and turns, and how did they get to this place 65, 70 years later. And it's these people share all their stories, and you just go back to all the way, and they were just a little helpless baby just like everybody else. Huh. Yeah.
and if we separate ourselves, I mean, maybe you guys, I don't know. Like, I've always grew up in a family, so I've always been in a house. Like, this is the first time I've ever really lived by myself alone, and it's just wild to think about. Like, in reality, I'm all alone here in this world. It's just me and myself and I. Now, when you're close to your wife or your spouse or your kids, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right there. But when you go out and you're out by the beach or whatever, it's just you. You're there. It's just us. It's each one of us individually. And to just like grasp that, it's just like, holy cow, like I'm alone here on this earth. I'm 100% alone. Now, obviously, I'm choosing my friends and my family to be around, but it's just me, and I got to make all these choices and these decisions to progress, to have success, to find love, to be able to have a better relationship with God, to have peace, to have stability, these are all my choices. I got to make these all on my own. Isn't anybody going to give them to me or be able to make life any easier? And it's just like I think I used to be of the understanding that if I just work hard enough, like people are going to come up to me and be like, "Hey, Chad, come take this, come work for me. You're such an amazing worker. I want you." And it
Yeah.
was just like it's like the gates of heaven were just going to open. Like, oh, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, now's my chance. Here I go. Where
Yeah.
now I've realized that it's more about me taking that next step, going up, talking to people, asking questions, having healthy communication. Anytime I see people at the gym, not being like, I don't know if they're going to want to say hi to me, just say, "Hey, Ethan, what up, dude? Good to see you." Boom, that's it. And then I go to the gym. Instead of it's just like, I'm too nervous to really say anything to anybody. Now it's just Chad, like being open, being honest, having the chains just broken away, and just being who I want to be. And at 41 years old, I've realized that there's just a few really important aspects of life. One, it's all the moments that I've previously had. Those are like my fondest memories. Being around really good people. And for me, it's currently trying to create a career where I can make people laugh. So I'm really in the next few years wanting to work on trying to do some form of comedy, mainly because I've tried the idea of wanting to be super intelligent and having a podcast where I could just go and like speak this great wisdom to all these people and hope they understand. It's like, dude, Joe Rogan's great at that. Jordan Peterson's great at that. All these people are great at that. The one thing Chad can do that nobody else can do is take away my humor and my ideas and these thoughts that come from me, because everything else is learned. It's a book that I've read. It's things that I understand. But my sense of humor, that's not something that anybody else can duplicate. ChatGPT can't do it because I've tried, and SNL's not going to be able to do it. Adam Sandler can't do it. That's something that's inside of me, and there's no better feeling for me than to see people laugh, to smile, and to be able to enjoy life. And so it's just like, okay, like that's what's special.
Yeah. Agreed.
That's cool. So are you wanting to do like stand up or like videos, or what do you have an idea about what you're thinking?
So I've written a number of stand-up sets that I haven't really had a really good place down here, and I'm a little bit uncomfortable, still a little bit insecure to just go out there on my own.
Right
And,
here, we're ready.
oh no, I mean like in front of like people.
What? We're people, aren't we? We're the perfect.
Yeah, no, yeah, you guys are people. Yeah.
That's cool. That would be really cool.
But I guess what I enjoy most are the skits, like creating characters. Like if I could be on SNL, like that would be the dream of just being able to like improv, make people laugh. Like just yesterday in our leasing office, our maintenance supervisor has these two little beautiful girls, 5 and 7. And dude, these girls are so curious. They'll come into the leasing office, and thankfully, I'm out there like answering the phone, dealing. But the assistant property manager is a older lady in there, and she's like, "Hey, girls," and they're like, "Hey, buddy. Oh, what's this? What's this thing? Oh, what do you do with that, Bonnie? Oh, what do you? Oh, what's that thing? What is that? Is that the paper shredder? Do you ever put your hair in it?" And they're just like asking all these questions. I'm just like, okay, like yeah, like that's what I need to do. I need to create a character for two little twin girls to where, oh, what's this? Oh, what's that do? Oh, yeah. Well, my mom was picking her booger, and the booger was so like they were actually saying this stuff. And I'm just like, oh my god, this is hilarious. But it's like, let's duplicate that stuff. But so yeah, comedy skits are probably my favorite. Like I love doing like creating characters and stuff like that. But no, I think that's getting us quite a bit far away from where we were on this topic.
Oh, that's all right.
Something that I think you guys were expressing is like religion and Christianity. Ethan, when you think about your relationship with God and Christianity, how do you try to separate Christianity from religiosity and not trying to just becoming religious? Is that something you really focus on? Is it something that you try to avoid, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll be honest, it's not something that I've thought like explicitly about, but I can like kind of think through it on the fly here. I I think there's good sides to religion and there's bad sides to religion. So I think what I would want to do is like take the good, leave the bad. The bad I would say is like trying to like manipulate people into believing something. Like you were talking about like God told me to do this. I'm going to tell you God told me to for you to do this thing. Like I don't think that's good. I wouldn't affirm that. So I would want to distance myself from like trying to manipulate people. I would want to distance myself from like just going around and like telling people here's how it needs to be without like listening to what they have to say, without having a good conversation. I would want to distance myself from an authority that's being abused. If there's someone who's like, you know, who lies, who has like reports of like sexual assault, like there's like two like people that I listen to in the past few years have who are Christian leaders have like gotten allegations of like sexual assault. Like I distance myself from that. So there's like aspects to that I really want to distance myself from. I think the good that I want to accept is like I think there's value to like having a relationship with God individually, like you were talking about. I think there's also value to having a relationship with God in community. Um, and notice I say community, not cult or like group of people like, you know, who are like bent on like, I don't know, forcing people to do their will. Um, because I think like God created us each uniquely. And so like, and uniquely with like unique pieces of himself, like kind of like showing through us in different good ways. And so I think there is a sense in which we can like experience the character of God in the good relationships that we have with other people who follow him. And so I also don't want to like distance myself from the community. I want to like contribute to that because I think that there is good when it's done right. But I think that when like you talked about like, you know, your background, and I think that's a good example of like community. I think community is really good, but like the better something can be, like the riskier it is. And so like when you have all these different people coming together and doing something, I think you then, you know, you get a bigger risk of them like making abuses, of it turning culty, of them manipulating people. And so you run that risk when you join community. But I think for me, at least, I see the risk as like worth it. But just being careful, being thoughtful, making sure I'm, you know, thinking through what I'm doing, I think is important.
One of the things that I've really tried hard not to do is come up with the label, like, what religion are you? Well, I can tell you who I am. I can tell you what I believe, but it's not going to be Christianity. It's not going to be Judaism, and it's not going to be a messianic. It's going to be a culmination of all three of those things. But my struggle is I don't want to associate with one of those groups, because in every single one of those groups, I've seen people who have totally taken advantage of it and just been a terrible person. It's like, I don't want to be a representation of what that label represents. And so this is the thing, like, you know, when it comes to Christianity has so many facets of it in terms of denominations. And it's like each one of these interpretations is a religion. And one of the reasons I'm asking you this question is because this weekend I was speaking to someone and they were talking about, oh, like, I'm Christian, but I'm not religious. I'm not religious at all. I was like, okay. So we were going into detail, and then they were asking me, I was like, well, do you know why Jesus didn't get married, right? And I was like, no, I mean, why? He's like, well, then he couldn't have loved us, because if he was married, he had to have that commitment with his wife. Then he couldn't have been committed to us. And in the back of my head, I just try to be empathetic to people, so I don't, like, you know, especially somebody who's a new believer or whatever it is. But I'm just thinking, is like, that is religion. Like, there's nowhere in the Bible that tells us why Jesus didn't get married. Like, that is something that your pastor said that you're regurgitating. And it's so often, it doesn't always have to be a bad thing, but it's just amazing to me where we have this Bible that has so many verses and so many chapters and so many things inside of it. But it's like, oftentimes when we're coming together in a religious setting or as a Christian or whatever, the things that we're talking about are things that have been passed down from a teaching about the Bible that are an interpretation of it or an idea of it. And it's just like, that is not in the Bible. Like, it's not in the Bible. And there's so many things that now have just been created of what Christianity is or what God is or what. faith is, that it's just like, oh man, it's just been so misinterpreted, and I would say diluted to where, I don't know. For me, it would be really, really hard to try to be just say that I was associated with any of those groups. And I just kind of wonder if maybe that's a struggle for you. Maybe it's not even on your mind, and it doesn't have to be, but just trying to wonder, how you maneuver through, I don't know, this journey that we called life, but also religion, and taking upon a label. Like you would say that you're a Christian, right?
I would, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a good question, and it is one I've thought about it less for myself, because I can see the tensions that you're saying, and those are all reasonable. Like I don't deny that, those are reasonable things that you're saying, but I have thought about it more in the context of like what it means to introduce like Christian belief. I don't know a better way to like sum it up, but like Christian ideas about Jesus. I've thought about it in the context of like introducing those into new scenarios, like as I'm thinking about like moving to another place in the world and like sharing what I believe with other people. So for instance, in Muslim countries, people aren't becoming Christians, or a lot of them aren't. They're Muslims who follow Jesus. That's what they like become or change like as they're learning. So I don't think it's necessary to identify with the label of the religion, and I think you're right that there is a risk of like being associated with like negative names, and there's like a lot of baggage that comes with that. There's no denying that. I think I would not necessarily use that label in a conversation naturally with someone who I didn't know, because I wouldn't want to bring that baggage. But if you ask me, I would just say, yeah, that's the easiest like way to identify what I believe. It's like a very shorthand way. Do I agree with every single thing that your average Christian would agree with? No, but it's like a shorthand for me. And also, I think that the biggest benefit to identifying with the label would be that it makes it easier to serve God in community. I think if you have, and not to say that like you couldn't do that with like your more unique label, but I think it makes it harder to serve with like-minded people. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't thought about it enough, and you've obviously thought about it
And
more,
I would say
so.
maybe for me, it's not so much the baggage that's associated with it. I don't know if it's that. To me, it's just sharing like I'm this has to come with the assumptions that people perceive as me now. It's just like, because it's such a broad gamut of
Yeah.
what being a Christian means. Like some of these places you'll go where they're speaking in tongues, and Benny Hinn, he's like putting his hands on them and they're falling over. And like, it's just like, holy cow. Like, I mean, I know that we could already speak for hundreds, if not thousands, of hours on this topic, back and forth with all the different
Yeah.
ideas that we have. And so it seems like what I'm hearing from you is that word Christian just means the acceptance of Jesus as the Messiah into your life. Is that right?
That's what I mean when I say it. For me,
Yeah.
but I
Okay.
understand what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think in its most simplistic form, if maybe me, I could just perceive it as that, I can very well understand that, right? But it's
Yeah.
just, sometimes when we go down these roads and all the association and all the dirt that you pick up as you're driving down there, that all that baggage that gets put on, or the assumptions that get thrown at you, it's just like, man, I don't want
Yeah.
that. I don't want to be associated with that.
Yeah.
And
No,
again,
that's yeah.
it's all based on what people perceive us, right? And so the
Right.
less
Right.
I care about what people think about me, the less I'm really going to care what this label means, or how people perceive me. So
Yeah. No, I mean that's really reasonable, and I think, like listening to you talk, I think that this is something that I need to think through more, because I don't want people to have like a misconception of what I believe just because I've chosen to be lazy and use a summary term for what I believe. So I think what you're saying is reasonable for sure.
and then I guess, Jake, were there any other like big topics that you guys discussed that maybe like brought more out of your own thoughts and ideas, to where you guys not so much that they were conflicting, but that you guys were able to share eye-opening understandings of different topics or anything like that?
Um, we were kind of talking about it today, but I guess my my idea of like the pyramids and it just kind of being this great big mystery, and so it kind of goes along with what we were talking about earlier, like the whole idea of the Bible, and he was talking about how it was like the Genesis being like poetic, and he was talking about it earlier, but just the whole genealogy leading back to exactly 12,000 whatever years ago and no older than that, and it just, I don't know, it just kind of never made sense to me because of the pyramids. And I talked about it on the podcast before, but like the Younger Dryas impact theory and the meteor hitting the earth and it being the last ice age and them dating that back to 12, 13,000 years ago or whatever, and then the pyramids predating that. So there was obviously an advanced people before that happened. To be fair, it's if you believe all of that, but I feel like that's probably what I believe. And it just, it seems like it was conflicting with what I always thought Christianity and the Bible were trying to say. And it seems to me like, I don't know, it seems to me that it is more likely to be true that it was kind of just like an older generation of people who were technologically advanced enough to make the pyramids, and them being so perfect in location, in dimension, in all of the stones set, and how far away they had to be from how many miles and hundreds of miles they had to take these huge stones. And yeah, he was just kind of talking about how the Bible and science, I don't know, it was just my idea of the Bible and science being against each other. It's kind of what we talked about at the beginning, but just the Bible and science going against each other rather than reading the Bible literally and just kind of taking for what it's saying. I guess if that made any sense from what I said.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that there's, if we're reading the Bible in context, that there can be a little bit of conjecture with how old the earth is, so that maybe the current idea of the dating methods that we have of the earth from a religious perspective are different than the dating methods of science. Is that what you're saying? Or,
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
because I
Yeah.
guess, Ethan, you would probably know, do you know what year we're currently in, like from a religious perspective?
I don't, yeah, because I wouldn't like necessarily subscribe to like the young Earth like position. So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not
Oh,
super
you
familiar.
you wouldn't.
I'm like I am like agnostic about it, I guess is the best way to put it. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, because of like what we were talking about earlier, I think I'm not convinced about this at all, so I don't want to like say it like super strongly, but the way that with Genesis being structured so poetically, and with it somewhat imaging the style of other like mythologies of other religions at the time, I think that it's possible that God was choosing to communicate through a genre that was not necessarily like intended to be taken as history. I think that would maybe be the best way to put it. So I think that there's a ton of truths in there, and I think that there's historical interest. Like I believe Adam existed. I believe the genealogies are like, well, I'd say something more about the genealogies, but like genealogies being there means there's a historical interest. But there's also, because there's like poetic things, I think that it's this like unique form of genre that not all of it I don't think is intending to be like this literally happened in 7 days. I think it's being represented in a poetic way. I think is maybe the way that I would say it. And as far as the genealogies from a religious perspective, because I know that the genealogies are also used to reach that young Earth date. Um, like genealogies, from my understanding, they're like known in the Bible to like skip generations sometimes, and be used for like theological purpose, not just um like historical purpose. So for instance, like Matthew, he takes a lot of the genealogy from Chronicles, but he like makes slight like modifications, like removing people and like altering names slightly. And if you like, I won't go into all of it, but there's like theological points that can be drawn from the way that he's structuring his genealogy. So that's something I'm actively wrestling with, to be honest. Like I don't have a strong opinion about it.
Do you have an idea currently of what the purpose of Genesis was,
Like
or why
all
do
of
you?
like the whole Genesis.
If you were, yeah, if you were to think about like right now the original authors, whoever wrote it, which do you have a belief of who wrote it?
I would say I believe Abraham is the primary like composer. Like it's possible that somebody maybe like helped him, but like yeah, I would give him the, or I'm sorry,
Moses, right?
Moses.
Okay.
Missaid that. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And so if you were to think about that, do you currently have like an idea of like what the purpose of it was to be written for a future audience or for I guess the Israelites
Yeah. Great question.
other
Uh
than just the genealogy?
yeah. So I mean the name Genesis, which I guess that might have not been until it was translated
Pure cheat.
into Greek, right? But I think that it was supposed to provide for the Jewish people an account of their existence, probably, and so uh, the chapters 1 through 11 are like creation, the flood, and Babel. And I would say that those are trying to communicate information to them about their origin and information about God, unique compared to like other religions. And then I would say that like the rest of it is like showing how the Jewish people came to be through Abraham and God's promises to Abraham that would then carry through to the Jewish people. So promises for like prosperity, for land, and for relationship with God. Like those are like kind of the three, like you could say, main promises in there. And so I think it sets it up so that then you see those promises play out in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy.
And then
Would that be
for
your understanding, or?
what's that?
Well, you go ahead and ask your follow up, and then I'll ask you.
And because I was asking more from an understanding of where you are with the genealogies. How do you just try? Do you try to come to an understanding of how old the Earth is, or like anything like that, or do you just kind of like let it be and try to just understand the scriptures and why they were written, their purpose, their context, and just go through that and kind of put the age of the Earth kind of off to the side right now? Where would you say you're at with that?
I would say I put the age of the Earth off to the side because I would say I don't think it's trying to answer the age of the Earth. And so the first thing I do when I'm like reading is I try to think, okay, like what is this trying to do? And like I want to like understand that first. Not to say, of course, we can then look and say, okay, and what other information might this reveal to us, even if it's not its primary agenda. Um, but I let me put it this way: like I believe the Bible is true, and so I want to like affirm what it's saying. So for me, it's not a question of like, oh, I don't like evolution, and so I want to shape Scripture to be different so that it fits with that view. I just like I want to know what the Bible says, and I'm just not convinced that the Bible is teaching the young Earth view, or that it really can even be used to deduce the age of the Earth, because I believe there's like gaps in the genealogy, because I believe that Genesis 1 is intended to like have a lot of poetic style. But again, I could be totally convinced otherwise about these things. Yeah.
And I guess with that mindset, do you ever feel conflicted? Um, I guess it seems like one of the main proponents of Christianity is prophecy. And so it seems like a lot of prophecy is very focused on figuring out the age of the earth to be able to try to understand and grasp a lot of these things. Do you agree with that? What,
Can you explain? So do you mean, because like what I'm understanding is like prophecy looking forward, not backward, right? Is that
correct,
what
correct,
are you?
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
like end times,
Oh,
like, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot. I should say people look towards the age of the earth currently to be able to determine prophecy in the future. And it seems like it's
Interesting.
of a lot of importance.
But so I mean, when people look at the earth currently to think about the future prophecy, they're more so looking at the earth from the distance of the prophecy, right, than the distance of its origin? Or am I wrong about that?
Like from where it is right now until the end.
No, like if people are, because you said people look at like the age of the earth in order to then look forward and understand, right? So
Right.
my understanding was if people were doing that, they were looking not at the total age of the earth, but at the amount of time that passed from the prophecy to the current moment.
Well,
Does that seem right, or am I wrong?
I was trying to think about Revelation in terms of, yeah, huh. It's a good
I'm not,
question.
yeah.
I don't know if I could answer that. Maybe I just kind of went off on a tangent trying to have a better understanding when I didn't really have a good understanding of the question that I was asking.
I mean,
But
that's fine. Yeah. I mean, prophecy, I'm not super well versed in prophecy anyway, so I probably wouldn't have a good answer no matter what.
yeah,
But yeah, what is your view of Genesis? Like, do you think about the age of the earth, or like what do you think about when you look at Genesis?
no, I don't. I've really kind of shied away. I think similar to you of trying to figure out what the age of the Earth was. I mean, Jake, if you pull up like a Hebrew calendar, that will essentially say what the Jewish people what year they think it is, and I think I think that's where I was kind of going with this in terms of prophecy. If you look at like Genesis and I believe in Exodus, it talks about there's every 7 years the land has a rest, and then there's like a super sabbatical to where it's a year. So, well, you know, you have 6 days. Every 6 days, seventh day is Sabbath, so there's a rest. And then I think is it every 6 years, and then every seventh year there's a rest for the land, so they're not picking any of the harvest or anything like that. And I think some of that understanding is like that 7,000th year is like this.
Mm,
What year does it say it's in right now, Jake? Does it say?
I don't know. I could look it up, but I think we looked it up
Oh,
one of the times, and it was 12,000 or 14,000 or something like that. Or
hmm.
I don't know. Maybe I'm
Okay.
wrong.
Okay. For some reason, I thought it was like 47 something, but
Okay.
yeah, I
Maybe
guess
you're
it doesn't
right.
really
I don't know.
matter. But and I would say that's a struggle that I currently kind of have with Genesis is trying to be able to, you know, grasp and understand like what to pull from it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I'm definitely wrestling with the same things. I think my goal is always like what was God trying to communicate through the original author, and then the other things are kind of like second tier. But yeah, I wrestle with it too, for sure.
And I would say one of the things that I wrestle with now that probably has taken part of a bigger focus is there's I don't know, like from the Old Testament to the New Testament, this disconnect to where we're trying to have a deeper relationship with God to where it seems like people are just trying to have a relationship with Jesus.
Hmm.
And like to you, what does that mean? How do you deal with that separation? And this See, I don't really know your beliefs, and I don't like to like bundle all of Christianity into one or anything like that. But for me, Christianity is really, really hard to deal with when it's just like there's just seems to be this outpouring of admiration towards Jesus. And I feel like sometimes like God, the creator of the universe, who created all the people who created Jesus, is left over here in this corner, and we're no longer like seeking him, but we're seeking his creation that passed died for us and sacrificed for us when like he's the one that created everything. And like I guess just when I hear like from a Christian perspective is like Jesus loves you, it's always Jesus, 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 Jesus. And it's like I understand what they're trying to get, but then again, I don't, because it's like when I hear that, it hurts me because I feel like they're taking away from God and who he was and the rules and values and moral standard that he set, that I know that I get a lot of value from and that I have that accountability with. When there was a sacrificial system in place previous to that. So I guess that's a huge struggle that I have with like just the Christianity label. Like, first, I can go and I can read the New Testament and I can appreciate everything that Jesus said, who he was as an individual, just like Moses, Abraham, David, all the things that they wrote, and I can take them as an aspect or a part like a Messiah, but not so much so that like his his death like is giving me life, because I still look at that there's constant transgression. And so that death, it being a forgiveness of sin, when we see in the Old Testament, each time that there was a sin, there was a sacrifice and there was a new sacrifice. And I get it, like, okay, well, was the ultimate sacrifice. So I guess that's just a struggle that I currently have.
Yeah. Does the like Christian identification of Jesus as God, does that help things or make it feel worse to you?
That makes it feel a little bit worse. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so I guess my first thought that just comes to mind, I mean, I don't have like a super great systematic answer, but I'll just say what comes to mind. I, I have sensed what you're saying, and I don't know why I'm like this, but I think uniquely I am thinking of God the Father more often than like Jesus centered, and probably, yeah. So that is something that I think is maybe different, because you will hear a lot more Christians like really, really talking only about Jesus and not talking about God at all. Um, like in the New Testament, when you look, like people pray to the Father. They might pray in the name of Jesus, but they're praying to the Father, right? So even New Testament, like Christianity or Christian teachings are about like conversing and praying to the Father being sovereign, all these concepts. And so to the extent that like Jesus has like co-opted any discussion about the Father, I think that that's probably like an abuse of modern Christianity than like its intention or the way that it was at its founding. For me, the identification of Jesus as God helps, but I can understand why if you didn't believe that, then it would seem like, okay, this is like an affront to God. How dare we like insult God and say this person is God? Like that would be crazy. But because I believe Jesus is God, to me that helps it, because if I worship Jesus, I believe that I'm worshiping God. Um, like I believe that like it wasn't just that we were like left alone to solve our problem, but that God solved our problem himself by coming as our sacrifice. So yeah, I don't know. Is there, maybe if you have more like specific thoughts or questions, you
Yeah.
can
So
help me
maybe
with
let's say you're having like a hard time in your life. Let's say one of your friends or somebody you know is having a really, really hard time. And there's usually a phrase where he's like, hey, you just got to take it to Jesus, trust Jesus. Like, logically, who is that Jesus that they're taking it to? And what do you think that actually looks like?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as far as what it looks like, I believe it's prayer, but I don't know that I would use the phrase take it to Jesus, but I would say, um, like pray about it, trust in God. I think that's like that is how I would say it. Now, I would encourage people to pray in the name of Jesus, because that's the pattern we see in the New Testament. But yeah, I would think like practically what it means to like trust is to like pray to God and trust in God, read scripture and meditate on what God has given us in that revelation. Um, the practicality of or the concept of like who is Jesus, where is Jesus, what is Jesus? The thing that first comes to mind when you ask that question is the book of Hebrews. So Hebrews is like uniquely interesting to me. It's one of my favorite books in the New Testament, because so much of the New Testament is focused on Jesus's death and Jesus's resurrection, and Hebrews is really focused on Jesus's ascension. So like Jesus died, is raised, the other thing is Jesus then goes to the Father's presence. And so I would see Jesus as being in the Father's presence, and he is like described in Hebrews as like being this intercessor. Like he goes to the Father on our behalf and like essentially like fights for like our needs, or like, you know, like advocates for us essentially. I think that would be one facet of who I see Jesus being now, and like his role in the world.
And for that, for somebody to be an intercessor or a mediary, like, why do you feel that there was a need for that?
Yeah. So I so here's, I guess, I'll work to it, because you're asking really good questions that I haven't like thought about systematically. Um I see Jesus's work as an intercessor as being in continuity with the priesthood that was established in the Old Testament. And so like God's initial plan with the Jewish people was to have someone in between him and the lay people in the community, where that priest would represent the people to God, and he would represent God to the people, because God is so holy and so great that who are we to approach God? And so um I see Jesus as being in continuity with that, and that Jesus is representing us to God, and he's representing God to us. Now, because I would say Jesus is himself God, in some way, practically, like that allows me to go to God directly. And so I think like part of the idea that we've inherited, where it's like I think it's intuitive for us to feel like, why would I need someone in between me and God? I can pray. I think that that's intuitive to us because we've like inherited that from the teaching that Jesus is like with the Father, and so we're able to pray, because that wasn't how it was for the Jews. Or I mean, if they could pray, they still had someone in between them and God as far as like the sacrificial system goes.
And theologically, when you think about that, so in order for someone to be an intermediary in terms of the process and the system that God set up, they had to be of the Levitical priesthood. And Jesus doesn't fit inside of that role.
Mhm.
So, like, how do you feel like he was able to bypass those rules, those regulations, and that system, and to be able to be that?
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to think, because the book of Hebrews like addresses that explicitly, and I'm like trying to pull my knowledge here from of how it's explained. Um, so the primary thing that I can remember. So if you look at the Old Testament, I believe it's with Abraham. It could be with Moses, but I believe it's with Abraham. There's a priest named Melchizedek that exists in the Old Testament. He's a priest somehow between like actual God Yahweh, and he comes and he blesses Abraham after a battle. Now, my understanding is that chronologically that happens before the Levitical priesthood. I could be wrong about that. I should probably double check that. But yeah, so that should be in Genesis, and then in Exodus and Leviticus. Yeah, Genesis 14. Okay, so that's pretty early on. So somehow there's a priest before the Levitical priesthood. So the way that I'm seeing it is Jesus is in continuity with the function of the Levitical priesthood, but he is a priest more so like the priest Melchizedek. And he's a priest like Melchizedek because Hebrews describes Melchizedek as like not having any beginning or end. Jesus has no beginning or end. And there's like some comparisons that it makes between him and Melchizedek. So that's how I think it works. Is it's like he in a sense is in a different priesthood, or a different line, but he's got a similar function.
And when you think about that, you go from Melchizedek, and then it seems like God sets up a priesthood. It's like, if you were to think about like logically, like why would God set up a priesthood when he had the Melchizedekian priesthood, and then now we're taking away from that Levitical priesthood and going back to the Melchizedekian priesthood, like back and forth, like like if like I'm just thinking out loud, like theologically, God, if we believe that he all encompassing, all knowing, like why is he changing his mind back and forth?
Yeah. I think I would say, I think so. I would want to premise this by saying this is me giving my best opinion. I definitely don't know this is a great question I don't really know the answer to. My best idea would be, I think that there was something imperfect about the Levitical priesthood, and that imperfection would be because it was given to humans. And so, though that would still be true with, I believe Melchizedek is a human. So, but so I don't think that, I don't know. I think there was an imperfection because humans were involved in the Levitical priesthood, and so Jesus came as God in the flesh, and then ascended to the presence of the Father as God in flesh. And so the replacement was done because of the imperfection due to the fact that humans were participating. I guess that doesn't really help with the question of why Melchizedek, then Levitical, then Melchizedek, but yeah, it's a good question. I'll be honest, I haven't thought about it much.
See, and a lot of these questions are just like struggles that I have, and so I just kind of bring these up not to try to get an answer or to push you in a corner, but just to try to get an understanding if maybe you've had any other insights to these things that maybe
No,
I have.
it's a really good question. I don't know.
So I guess for you guys, like just being able to have these conversations, work through these things, I guess, has it been encouraging? Has it been motivating? Has it been inspirational? What has it been?
Yeah, I would say for me, it's definitely been an encouraging experience. I mean, for the last, as long as I can remember, it's never been seeking out God or trying to find what's true and asking what my purpose is and show me, like, just kind of looking for guidance. And I don't know, it's kind of opened my eyes to it's opened my eyes to seek out what I actually believe, because I don't know, growing up all the way up until, well, I don't know, like very very recently, like within the past couple years, I would say I didn't really have a belief. I mean, we were raised up Christian. We went to a private Christian school, but it wasn't really ever my individual thoughts, my individual beliefs. I just kind of went with the flow and never really thought about, never really asked about it. And now it's kind of opening my eyes, making me think about what I actually believe, and kind of, I don't know, over the past couple days I've just been kind of praying, and I haven't prayed in I don't know, a very very long time. It's just kind of asking for help, seeking guidance, and kind of showing me my purpose and looking for something, because I don't know, there's definitely been times in my life where it's like very lonely and it feels like there's not much of a path to go down, and it feels like I'm lost. It feels like a lot of those things, and I feel like just asking for help, seeking guidance, and I feel like it helps with a lot of that, especially just in marriage too. It's if I'm if we are not going to hold each other, if I'm not going to hold myself accountable and my wife isn't going to hold herself accountable, which obviously we will hold each other accountable, but when worse comes to worse and people fight, what's going to keep that bond strong? Like, what is our marriage based in? Like, obviously we love each other, we want the best for each other, but what is our purpose together, you know? Like, what is our love based in? How can I make that stronger? How can I make my life better, more purpose filled, more joyful, more just seeking for that, I guess. And I guess, yeah, these conversations have kind of opened me up to that, I would say.
Because based on what you're saying, Jake, it almost sounds like just having these conversations and being able to pray and being able to have this understanding has given your marriage more value, because it's placed that commitment and brought maybe a third person or a third being into it, which I think anytime people get married, you understand that it's between
Right.
you, your partner, and God, but bringing more value to that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, we weren't really religious when we got married, so it was just kind of between us. So there wasn't really a third party to begin with. So I mean, we're still working on that and kind of trying to understand the ideas of each other and what we believe, and just kind of, I don't know, having ideas for myself and what that looks like, and just kind of trying to strengthen that. It hasn't really been put into practice much yet, but just the idea of it and kind of trying to seek out what is true for myself, I guess.
You talked a little bit about praying. For you, prayer, do you get comfort from just being able to get these things off of your chest and
Yeah.
feel like you are speaking to someone who's hearing you, or you actually like, do you actually feel like you're receiving some type of uh, encouragement or comfort from being able to share these things? Like, what does that look like?
I don't necessarily feel a response being received on my end by any means so far, but it is it is comforting to put the idea out there in the hopes that somebody is listening and kind of cares about what I'm saying and is trying to, like, a lot of times when I'm praying, it's like I say something and then I like try to explain it, but it's like I don't really need to explain it. Like, if you are the all-knowing God that created this universe and created me and everything around me, it's like you know what I mean, like you know my tendencies, and like you understand what I'm saying. I don't have to explain myself in like a metaphor or an analogy. It's like I don't have to do that, and it's just kind of asking for, not like asking for, oh, give me a better job, let me get a better car. It's like show me the way, you know? Like Ethan, I was asking Ethan about cuz he said that he was having, how he got into what he's doing now is he was kind of having battles with his own faith, and kind of he was praying to God and asking, like, show me the way and I'll follow that full heartedly and I'll live my life around that. And it's just kind of, if this is the truth, show me the way. Not like those words, but just like, show me the way and I will follow that. You know what I mean? And just having comfort in speaking my thoughts and just knowing they are received, or I guess, I don't know. That's how I feel about it, I guess.
Hmm. That's interesting, because I would say that my prayers right now are more so of asking for faith, a strengthened faith,
Mm.
because like any type of sin, any type of, I don't know, even just being entertained or getting bored, it's like all those are opportunities to be able to pray.
Mm.
And like, just a sin, it seems, from a lack of faith. So it's like, God, why is my faith so weak to where I can sin? Like, how is that happening? Are you not at the forefront of my mind? Do I not have a good understanding of you? If I don't have a good understanding of you, how do I get a better understanding of you? Because
Mm.
it seems like throughout my life, that understanding of you has been manipulated by people, their opinions, and trying to go to church and listening, trying to, not just read the Bible, but have a better understanding of the Bible. Well, how do you do that? Well, then you learn Hebrew. Well, you learn Hebrew, and then you have people's interpretations of what the Hebrew word is saying, and then you have this dogma about the Jewish laws and why this was created. Then you have the Christian ideas of, well, what this is saying and what this verse is saying and what Jesus meant here and all these different things. And it's just like,
Mm.
oh, okay, like, hold on. Like, these books were all written by men, like, and I have to hope that they had pure intentions and God actually like gave them the words. But even when I'm speaking here tonight, like some of the questions I was asking Ethan, it was just like they were such complex questions to where it was just like I was just trying to get an understanding, and it was just like, what am I asking? Like I don't even really know what I'm trying to ask here. So it's like, what's the purpose? And just I think for me, it's about like just having a pure heart, like trying to have control of my emotions, not and being able to stand up for myself. I think it's like having a relationship to where I'm fearless of other people and their thoughts and opinions of me, but also being humble enough to understand that I may need to change and I may need to do better and to be able to be receptive and empathetic of that. But I would say my biggest tendency is when I share my thoughts or my ideas is to be able to be impressionable and listen to other people's like, oh, wow, maybe I was wrong there. Or maybe I did do that. It's just, I would say I stand up for myself less, well, more so now than I ever did previously with him.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add or ask on to this conversation? Anybody?
Me?
Either one of you?
No, I think that this is a huge conversation that we can keep having. I think we should, keep having Ethan on, continuously as we continue to like go through this journey. You guys continue to discuss, ask more questions. I think for me, it's just really important to notate that this is a journey that we're all on, and it's going to look different for everybody in terms of how we go about trying to find God, how we seek God, how He speaks to us, maybe where we're at. Like I still question whether like I should really be down here in Miami, Florida. Like it's just yeah, it's just it just doesn't feel right, doesn't set well with my heart in terms of the people that I come across and stuff like that. It's like, okay, well, I have a really stable income. I feel like, I have a really good opportunity down here, but it's like, well, if this isn't it, I'm not just going to go jump ship somewhere else. So it's like, God, if you want me to be somewhere else, like I need to have some guidance as to where I go. Cause even though I may not feel settled right here, it's just like, I don't want to pick up and go to another Miami like I did previously, just coming down here for the warm weather and, the huge opportunities of success or whatever. And so, again, we're all doing this. Like there's people who are, going to be getting married. They're going to be having babies. Maybe their kids are going from elementary school to middle school to high school. Their kids are getting cars. Their kids are getting married. Like there's so many things things happening on people's lives to where this journey can look different for everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
And so just really, I don't know. I just want to try to make sure that I'm not critical of people who are trying to find God and trying to pinpoint how they're doing it or anything like that with my questions or what I have to say. Sometimes even though like when they're spitting out some dogma or something like that, it's like, I don't like you saying that. And it seems like you're like really trying to teach me here. But I'm just going to like, okay. And just like let it go and try to be empathetic and understanding. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if you guys want me back on, I'm more than willing to come. This was a fun conversation. And also you should call me out if I'm ever spitting dogma or trying to teach you something. I really wouldn't mind. So.
No, I think it was all of just questions, just trying to understand where each other, when you come to religious conversations and spirituality and these, like, it's really important to try to understand where people are coming first, before you start really trying to dive deep into it. So I think we're continuing to set the ground and the foundation of an understanding. I mean, I think I have an idea, Ethan, but like, what would you say is your purpose in all of this and what you're planning on doing? Like, what's your heart? What at the end, when this is all over, what would you hope to have accomplished? What would you want God to say to you?
Yeah. I mean, kind of like Jake was talking about with the prayers he's praying right now of like, God, what do you want me to do? Like, whatever you want, like, show me, I'll just do it. That's kind of like what I started this with many years ago. And I think that's where I still am, where it's like, my goal is I want to honor God. So that's like the kind of like the umbrella under which what I'm working under. And within that, like my hope is to like establish God's authority like throughout the earth. And so I think that that largely looks like, well, one, like I want to like serve others, I want to be loving, I want to like take care of people, help those in need who don't have much money. I want to do things like that. And then I also want people like to help people know God, because I think that's the other way that like helps like establish like God and his presence. And so like my role that I'm seeking as a Bible translator is especially geared towards like helping people know God and like have access to like where I believe he's revealed himself. So that's what I want. Like I really want to honor God in that, and also that like following Jesus is like it makes people's lives better, and I think that it like is like a saving way, the saving way. Um and so like I want to like help people come to that.
And for
Yeah.
you, helping people to know God, it's by them being able to have understanding Him in their own languages, to where it's not currently available to them. Is that what I'm hearing, or is it deeper than that?
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly want to do that in just anyone. Like I want to help anyone know God. But I like believe my skill set, like just like the gifts that God has given me, lend particularly well to like language work. So that's why I'm working to like do Bible translation.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a lot about like, okay, I believe there's this like higher purpose, and like how do I best like situate myself in that based on like the talents and skills and desires that God has given me.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. For me, I think, you know, I don't know. As much as I used to try to like teach people about God and want to share all that I knew, today it's more about just being love and empathy and being a kind and compassionate person, but also setting up boundaries. Like I've had coworkers who want to talk about like what's going on in the news. I guess there was some person in Japan who like was a man who dressed as a woman and who had a whole bunch of people come over and like sleep with them. He's like, "You want to see this?" And I was like, "Dude, that's not really something that I want to be a part of." And so it's me setting those boundaries and standing up for myself instead of just like feeling uncomfortable and just be like,
Hmm.
"Oh, okay, yeah, like show me." Like it's man, creating boundaries are a really big
Hmm.
thing, and you can do it in a kind and compassionate way to where it's healing to yourself, but also helps people be aware of what they can do and what power they have over you. So
Yeah, man, I think that's great, and I think like that's also, I know we were probably winding down, but I think that's like a really good point, because I don't think that the only way that you like represent God to the world is through like sharing information about God. And it sounds like you're doing that, but you're like being loving and compassionate and like making sure you're not crossing boundaries, and I think that's super crucial too. So that's great.
Alrighty. Any
any
closing
final thoughts,
statements?
Jake?
I do not have any.
Do you have any, Ethan?
I'm gonna be support raising in a few years, so if anybody wants to send me some money. No, I don't have anything.
Alrighty.
Do you guys want to like kumbaya it out and
Mm-hmm.
like say, "Oh, thanks so much for the conversation. You've been helping me so much." Like we started off with this wall of love. Might as
Yep.
well continue on with it.
Yep.
God, you really touched my heart. I just really appreciated all of your opinions and thoughts. And
Patty cake, bake me. No, it was an enjoyable conversation. I appreciate you being on as a guest and sharing your conversation. I'm excited about the future conversations that you and Jake will have, and hopefully you'll be willing to allow me and all of our listeners, however many that is, to be able to share.
Yeah. Of course.
So,
Yep. Thanks for
so
coming
much
on,
for
man.
listening, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Monte's Gems.
Yes, sir.
I hope you guys have a good night.
Alrighty. See you, everybody.